There were so many concepts that I was trying to decide between when I was planning this episode. I could have talked more about EMDR and trauma work, distress tolerance and finding safety, or even more about the mind-body connection, because these are all things we talked about in our last episode. However, in listening back, I thought I would continue the conversation we started in episode 4 around breath, while also incorporating the idea of building a more functional body. Being able to exert energy and move our bodies in different ways is important if you want to exist in the world. Walking around the house, doing laundry, reaching up or bending over to reach items in the kitchen cabinet, it all involves our ability to move, which in turn involves our ability to breathe. Today, I want to build on what Brandon shared, as well as the introduction to breath back in episode 4. As a disclaimer, there may be swearing in this podcast, but sometimes we get caught up in the human experience. It happens. So let's dive deeper and see if we can get a little uncomfortable and create some insight today. First, I want to introduce the idea of conditioning, which is your ability to produce energy to meet the task at hand. It might be hiking, strength training, climbing, wandering on vacation, playing with your pet, or even just going for a gentle walk. Anything that involves moving your body takes energy or strength, and we want to be able to do it without pain or getting out of breath. For those of you that have forgotten everything about biology, there are 2 systems that work to use the energy that you have stored up: your aerobic and anaerobic systems. The aerobic system is the one that we use the majority of the time, and if it's well developed, can give you hours of energy without becoming fatigued. For example, long distance running. The more stores you have, the longer you can run for. This system is incredibly important, but it can also take longer to generate energy, meaning you have to consistently work on conditioning in order to increase your energy stores. Aerobic exercise uses the oxygen that we bring into our body system through breathing to turn carbohydrates and fats to produce energy, which is needed in order to move our muscles. Your aerobic system is working most of the time, not just when you're working out. If you are moving and using your body, you are using your aerobic system. And the stronger this system is, the easier it is to access your anaerobic system. The anaerobic system generates energy quickly and can only sustain that energy for 60 to 90 seconds. For example, sprinting, short bursts of high intensity. Developing both of these systems allow them to play off of each other. You will have more endurance and the ability to go for extended periods of time. And if you do need to push yourself and activate your anaerobic system, once those 60 to 90 seconds are over, if both systems have been strengthened, you will be able to recover faster and not be as fatigued for as long. Whatever activity you do and whatever level you are at, we want to make sure that you are well-rounded. If you are an endurance athlete, make sure you add some high intensity to your workout. If you are all about the hit, add some endurance in. If you spend most of your time sitting on the couch but are starting to get into walking, start with slow, slightly longer walks. Then, as it feels more comfortable, add in some faster paced but shorter walks to your regimen. This will help those long walks feel even easier and help you move for longer periods of time over time. If you find yourself pushing too hard too quickly, you'll notice that you're going to run out of breath. It's harder to keep going, and your fatigue sets in. This is a mistake that myself and a lot of other people I know have made. We believe the thought, I have to push well past those limits in order to get stronger. And yes, sometimes you want to test your limits, but if you do it every single time, you aren't strengthening your aerobic system as effectively as you could be. In the book, Tactical Barbell 2, Conditioning, the author, who uses the pseudonym KB to remain anonymous, talks about the long, steady state, where you move at a pace slow enough that you are able to breathe and not metaphorically die throughout the entirety of your exercise. This allows oxygen and energy to continue to move throughout your body the whole time and does not put intense pressure on your heart to pump because it's pushed so hard that it can barely do its job. Basically, if you can't breathe and let's say conversationally talk, then you're moving too quick. You're pushing yourself too hard and you need to slow it down a little bit. My brother used to follow that belief that I push myself as hard as I can anytime I run and eventually I'll get better. Then he learned about the long steady state and started running slowly, consistently able to keep a conversation going throughout his run, starting with 15 minutes, then 20 minutes, eventually moving up to running for an hour at a time. And then when he went back to focus on pace and distance and pushing himself, his ability to breathe and his limits had increased, and it was a lot easier than he was expecting. Now, anytime I talk about training, he hands me this book and says, review this, it'll help. And you know what? It does, which is why I am talking about it today in this episode. The long, steady state helps build up your energy stores so that when you want to push yourself or go past what used to be your limit, you'll notice that it's shifted and it's going to feel better. And if we want to be able to breathe effectively, no matter the activity that we are doing, we want to extend our endurance during our training time. And for those of you that don't train, maybe start going on some walks and see how that feels. If we can increase our endurance during our activity, then when we do something fun with our friends or family, we are less likely to be gasping for air. Many of us do not like working out, but we don't work out for the fun of it. We work out so that we can do the other things that we actually love. If you want to speed up, you might want to slow down first. Slowing down brings intentionality, curiosity, and helps you build a pattern that works for your body and your mind. So now that we've talked about how to help extend your energy and therefore making breathing easier, let's talk about how to breathe. In my last episode, Brandon talked about how when he first started learning how to breathe, he thought that he was already practicing diaphragmatic breathing. But really, he was just breathing with his belly and not engaging the right muscles. And in another episode, I talked about how our breath can signal to our minds that we are safe or stressed, to relax or panic. And we can use our breath to work with and communicate with our bodies. Our breath keeps us moving, keeps us alive, and helps us be the best us that we can be. So if we can improve our breathing, we will feel even better. Now, in today's episode, I am going to talk a little bit about another book, a resource, and specifically, we're going to talk about nose versus mouth breathing and the research behind it. We will get to diaphragmatic breathing in the future. I just didn't have time today. So please follow, like, subscribe so that you can get all that information again in the future. When Breath by James Nestor was first recommended to me, I was told it will change how you view your body and your lungs. I was also told about how the only negative reviews that my recommender could find were those saying none of this information was new. It is all based on old research and old knowledge. However, this knowledge is not commonplace. People are not taught how to breathe properly. So if you already know this information, of course it's going to seem repetitive. But as the book stated, a lot of this information has been found and lost for centuries. And I appreciate that James Nestor had the wherewithal to write it all down in one place. And that's why he called the book Breath, the New Science of a Lost Art. Breathing isn't just some passive act we do to stay alive. How we breathe can affect our physical and mental health. And this book tells us how to shift that effect from a negative or neutral one to a positive one that helps us feel better, stronger, more energetic, and ready to tackle the world. Now that I've sung some praises, let's talk a little bit about this lost art of breathing. As I was reading this book, I marked through each idea I found fascinating, and then realized that was way too much to share in a single minute episode. So please go read Breath if anything I say interests you. When the author was describing his motivation behind writing this book, he talks about how he was plagued with breathing issues his whole life, which took him on a deep dive into research on breath. And then he began working with other researchers. He even plugged his nose for 10 days to only allow for mouth breathing, and then did nose breathing for 10 days after that, and notice how his system responded and changed. Now, this is just fascinating and also a little gross because you get really congested when you only mouth breathe, which we'll talk about in a second. So today we are mostly going to talk about the fascinating research depicting the difference between breathing through the nose or through the mouth. Our breathing capacity has changed over the course of human evolution, but especially during the industrial age. One theory for why this happened is that our food got softer. White breads, puddings, soups, which means we did not need our teeth to chew, and our brains needed room to grow, so it took that room from the fronts of our faces. This evolution eventually led to snoring, sleep apnea, and basically choking on ourselves while we sleep. Our ancestors all had perfect teeth, plenty of space, and giant nasal cavities. Research shows that 90% of us breathe incorrectly, which leads to chronic diseases including asthma, anxiety, ADHD, psoriasis, all of which could be reduced or reversed by breathing in a healthier way. When the nasal cavity gets congested, airflow decreases and bacteria flourish. This leads to infections, colds, and even more congestion. Mouth breathing leads to decreased pressure, which causes the soft tissues in the back of the mouth to loosen, creating less space and making it more difficult to breathe. Nose breathing forces air against the tissue at the back of the throat, making the airways wider and breathing easier. Over time, these muscles and tissues get toned, they get stronger, and then they stay open and wide, and breathing stays easier. If you are someone who has congestion or blockage and have been told you'll never breathe through your nose again, yes, it might be true, but based on the research provided in this meta-analysis of a book, there is a chance that you can reverse the damage done and feel better. Now, nose breathing is important for many other reasons than just helping the cavity at the back of the head stay open, which, to be fair, is very important. But it's also used to regulate certain hormones. Again, certain hormones are also regulated via the act of nasal breathing. Vasopressin is secreted when we are in deep sleep. If we struggle to breathe, which happens more and more as we mouth breathe, we struggle to get deep sleep, and this hormone will not be secreted. This matters because vasopressin tells our cells to store water and helps us sleep through the night without having to get up to pee. If we aren't getting deep sleep, our cells don't store water. We wake up with dry mouths from mouth breathing and drink more water, and then we are constantly waking up to go to the bathroom. Another benefit of nose breathing is it helps the sinuses release nitric oxide, which is important for circulation, immunity, weight, and sexual function. In fact, Viagra works by releasing nitric oxide into the bloodstream, but your sinuses can do this for you naturally if you are breathing right. So, nose breathing helps keep the tissues and muscles strong, keeps our breathing tube open, and helps regulate some hormones. Our noses are so much more than just an extra breathing tube. Research also shows that the tissues in our nose is actually made up of erectile tissue, which means it's more sensitive, and it can mirror states of health. it gets inflamed during sickness, and the left and right cavities work together like an HVAC system. They control temperature, blood pressure, and send signals to the brain to regulate moods, emotions, and sleep states. How do the nostrils work together to help regulate your body? I am so glad you asked. This book, Breath, and the author, James Nestor, talks about the right nostril as a gas pedal. Circulation speeds up, the body gets hotter, and there is an increase in stress levels, blood pressure, and heart rate. Basically, it activates the sympathetic nervous system, which we talked about in part 1 of this breathing series, and it helps you be more alert and ready for anything. It powers the left side of the prefrontal cortex in the brain, where decision-making and logical thought is produced. The left nostril works in the opposite way. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system and works more like a brake. It helps lower blood pressure, cools the body, and reduces anxiety. It powers the right side of the prefrontal cortex, which influences creative thought and negative emotions. One of my favorite facts from this book, because it relates to the topic that I nerd out about the most, mental health, is that they tested this with a schizophrenic woman in 2015 at the University of California and learned that she had left nostril dominance, which again is tied to creative thought and more negative emotions. When they taught her to breathe through the right nostril more, she actually experienced fewer hallucinations. We seriously need more research on this topic. It would be so cool to know how significant of a difference that might play. This research supports the theory that our nostril breathing ebbs and flows. We have a tendency to switch between calm and activated, fantasizing and being more detail-oriented, which matches this cycle of our nostrils. And actually this week I've been pretty stressed. And every time I lay down or sat down and started to try to relax a little bit, I noticed that I was breathing through my left nostril. Versus when I was feeling more activated, had a lot going on, was trying to juggle a lot, I was breathing more through my right nostril. Now, of course, this has only been about a week of me noticing it, but it did actually match up with what this research was showing. So pay attention to your nostrils. And this also means that you can help achieve balance in these different systems through breath, which leads us to the try something portion of this episode. I'm going to guide you through Nadi Shodhana breath, which means channel purification, and it's also known as alternate nostril breathing. If just listening to this is confusing, I'm also going to be recording it and posting a video of this breathing exercise that you are welcome to follow along with on my Instagram at InsightsWithUsPod. If you are walking around or driving or not really in a place where you can plug up your nostrils and do alternate nostril breathing, that is totally okay. Just breathe in and breathe out through your nose as I guide this exercise. You don't have to plug up your nostrils or anything like that. So, to get started, you're going to put a hand out in front of you. I'm going to use my right hand. And I want you to stick your thumb out and then your ring finger and your pinky. So your middle finger and your pointer finger are still making a fist. They're still closed. What's going to happen is first you're going to plug your right nostril with your thumb. And we are going to inhale through the left nostril. Plug both of your nostrils just for a sec. Unplug the right. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Plug both. Unplug the left. Exhale through the left. Inhale through the left. Plug both. Unplug the right. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Plug both. Unplug the left. Exhale through the left. Inhale through the left. Plug both. Unplug the right. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Plug both. Unplug the left. Exhale through the left. You can continue this for as long as you like. You can also slow down that breathing if you like. And I will go through it again on my Instagram, nice and slow with that visual aid if you got lost there. And why this breathing is so cool is that if the right nostril activates the parasympathetic system and the left nostril activates the parasympathetic system, this breathing, alternating those nostrils, can help create balance to regulate your nervous system. Breath can be utilized and shifted in so many different ways. And hopefully your mind is feeling a little bit open to all the different ways that this can exist and to the incredible power of the nose. What the author of Breath emphasizes time and time again is if you don't use it, you will lose it. If you don't use your muscles, they get weak and your body has to overcompensate. If you don't use your aerobic system, it will get weak. You will struggle to breathe and use your energy. It is the same with the nose. If you stop breathing through your nose for whatever reason, and then you never start again, it will weaken. The tissue inside the nasal cavity and throat won't be strong enough to stay open, and then snoring and sleep apnea can happen as a result. So what is one quick solve here? It's easy. Mouth taping. Yes, it is exactly how it sounds. I take a small amount of surgical tape vertically across the center of my mouth at night, and I will tell you what, once I got used to how weird it felt, I started sleeping so well. Because what it does is it helps keep your mouth closed and allows you to use your nose. Now I do it right in the center so I can still kind of talk or open my mouth out the sides if I need to. But it made a difference. When I fall out of habit and I stop using it, I notice issues like waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, waking up with sleep apnea episodes, or even just feeling more fatigued throughout the day. In part 3 of this breathing series, I want to tell you more about the other parts of the body that are necessary for healthier breath, like the lungs, the diaphragm, and how these pieces all go together. But for now, I want you to just sit with this idea that the nose matters. Breathing in and out through your nose can help you live a healthier life. And I want to end with this quote from George Caitlin's book, Breath of Life. Shut your mouth. Hopefully, something we talked about today resonated with you. If it did, let yourself sit with that idea for a little while longer. If you have any questions for this podcast or any themes you'd like for us to focus on in the future, send us a message on Instagram at insightswithuspodcast or send us an email at insightswithus@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please follow, like, or subscribe. You can also donate on Podbean's Patreon program or find us on buymeacoffee.com. I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you are listening. Thank you for creating insight with us.